guys, here today with another Fairmont video. So you can see that from the last video I have just gotten the motor mounts done, and you can see we've made quite a lot of progress. We've made quite a lot of progress. So you can see we got two turbos that came in the mail, and friend drew funny faces on them. I decided to go with twin 7875s. The reason I chose to go with these is because the price point for performance. Now I will be running a trans brake in this car, so what I'm hoping is that we can get this turbo spooled before the car even launches, and we should have plenty of exhaust flow to support a lot of horsepower. Now, you'll notice that I'm using two passenger side truck manifolds, and the one side is down low and the other side is up high. My dad and I really like to use the passenger side truck manifolds, if you can find them without the EGR port, because they really tuck themselves up against the engine block really well. The driver's side would put your exhaust outlet kind of down here, and it's just a little harder to work with. So on most of our single turbo setups, we've done two passenger side manifolds. Now you'll also notice that the wastegate port is coming off of priority flow. This is another thing that learned in the past. You really want to get priority flow on your wastegates. It's huge. I mean, it's really hard to control without it. So we're running two VS Racing 50 millimeter wastegates. We picked up one. Here, I'll dig one out for you. We picked up one with a bunch of other turbo parts, and bought another one. They're only like $100 a piece, so it's kind of hard to beat. But big old wastegate. So one will sit here. Might have to make a little heat shield to keep it from cooking the turbo. And then the other one, of course, will sit down here. So, see how that works. Planning to use a truck alternator bracket. So that's another budget option. What we normally do is we cut the power steering portion of the bracket off, and that sits down here, and then we just run the alternator portion, and then you can run your belt pretty cleanly. Probably going to copy Matt's setup and run a idler in this general location. So also picked up a G+ throttle body, and running a Trailblazer SS intake. So the other neat part about this that I showed in the last video was the oil pan and how well it fit. Well, because we're running that, this intake, which is rather tall, fits under the flat hood, which is pretty darn cool. And another thing that I picked up, another thing from experience. So you'll notice that I bought the racing baffle for the oil pan. There's trapdoors in here. Oil can go that way, but it can't go that way. and there's a couple of them in there. And another thing that we've learned from experience is oil control is extremely important. If your 60 foot is below like a 1.6, an F-body pan will not cut it. And we needed that kind of height out of our setup in order to get that Trailblazer SS intake underneath the hood. And that was one of my goals, was to get everything under the flat hood. And I really wanted to run a Trailblazer SS intake just because they're worth so much horsepower. So we accomplished it. I guess I'll give you a view of the exhaust underneath the car. So the class I would like to run in, you have to run stock frame rails from bumper to bumper. So we had to get a little creative with the exhaust to make sure it goes around the stock frame. So you can see it comes down through here. There's a nice little area down here to route your exhaust. I don't know if that's what they intended it for, but there's definitely a lot of room, and so that makes it super nice. Now we just have to get it down and out of the car, and then got to run some O2 bungs. Also, what I have been working on today is gutting the interior. So another rule in the class is you need to have a fully upholstered interior minus the headliner, that being optional. So in order to get the cage in the car, we obviously have to make the interior go, because we don't want to light it on fire. So I've been gutting the interior very carefully because it's all going back in. Now what we can do is, you can see all this undercoating, and it's amazing how easily this stuff is peeling off. You can see a chunk of it there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape all this stuff off, because when I see this my brain instantly is like, there's a ton of weight that I can take off the car. Now the other thing is the class requires a minimum weight of 3,200 pounds with driver. So you might be asking, why are you going to all this trouble to make a car light when you have to make it weigh 3,200 pounds? Well, by getting the weight off of the front of the car, you can put it onto the back of the car. So essentially we're going to gut the car and then add weight to the back of the car, most likely, in order to get the car to get as much traction onto the rear tires. So that's why we're going through all this effort to try and make it light. So making progress. Next up is the cage. We got to get some subframe connectors in here. That's something you're supposed to run the stock floor pans for the class I want to compete in, but you can notch it for subframe connectors, and you can notch it for what was the other thing? Oh, transmission clearance and a couple other things, but yeah, obviously we don't have to do that because there's plenty of room. So I'm going to stop babbling and get back to work. Next up is the cage, so you'll see that in next week's video, hopefully. I'm not sure how quickly we're going to get that order. We're most likely going to order it through S&W just because, well, we'll see what they they charge, but we have a bunch of roll cage material, so planning to go with a chromoly cage, and we have a bunch of cage material, but this cage was for a 55 Chevy, and you can see that main hoop is definitely not going to work. It's yeah, so we're going to have to order a main hoop and a halo bar and weld it all together, and hopefully all those straights and stuff we can use. I'd like the back seat to still be semi-functional. It's actually kind of neat the way it folds down. This video is getting kind of long, huh? So you can see it folds down really nice, and then you can put all your stuff in there. But I'd kind of like it to be you know, functional still. Oh, another thing I wanted to show you. Let me show you my intercooler. So this car we've been kind of building with like spare parts that, you know, we bought for, you know, this or that project, and we never changed directions, or, you know, it just didn't work out the way we hoped. But, you know, we buy lots of parts that are cheap, and we may or may not use them. I'll set you down real quick. But they were cheap, and hopefully they work. And if they don't, then sell them, or hopefully they work on the next project. So we've had this intercooler sitting around. Set you down again. Yeah, we've had this intercooler sitting around for a year or two, and fits in here pretty nice. And so, yeah, I bought this off the Sloppy Mechanics Classified page. You can see it has dual inlet, one down there, one down there, and then a single outlet. So obviously we need to get it up and into the airflow, but it will allow us to run twin turbos. It might be a little small for the amount of power I want to make, but hopefully ethanol kind of masks that problem. And I mean, obviously we went on air to air. Another another rule. There's so many rules. You can't run a water tank aft of the firewall, so behind the firewall, which is a pain in the butt, because, you know, if you run a water to air intercooler, it's nice to have an ice tank that you can fill with ice, and so not being able to put that in your trunk is bad for weight distribution. Sorry, my camera abilities have been kind of sucky. All right. So another thing to show you. So another part that we actually saw this. It's a brand new. It may have been run like once, but you can see how clean it is on the inside. This is another part that we picked up that the guy just wouldn't let us walk away without buying it. So I think we paid like $40 for it. It's like a brand new radiator, and it fits in there pretty darn good. You can see the intercooler fits in front of it, and we got plenty of room. So we just got to get all this plumbed up. You can see our exhaust has progressed pretty well, so we just got to get that the rest of the way out, and then we got to get the 9-inch in and a couple other parts. But this is getting to be a long video, and who knows if people are even watching. But so yeah, it's that's my progress update. It's coming along really nicely. I'm really liking here, let me get on the ladder. I'm really liking this angle. So hopefully the car is low enough that you can look at it from this angle, because it looks pretty cool. It's the symmetry is kind of neat. Not that we really did this for the symmetry. I'd be just as happy with a single setup, but when you're not allowed to modify the floor and you want to get the car low, it makes exhaust routing kind of difficult without bottoming out, and we need to make a 1,200-mile trip, and so blah 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 blah. Lots of words. So yeah.